How are y'all doing? My name is Jason. I work at All Out Bikes in Four Oaks, North Carolina, and today we're going to be doing a couple of things. We've got this new frame, this new bike here. It's a 16-inch kids bike that we're going to be putting together, and which is going to be kind of uneventful, but I figured that we'd also talk about how I got into the bike industry and why I've been in it for so long. So with that being said, let's go ahead and start to get this thing put together. I can already see it's missing some parts, but that's part of our job, is to kind of get things put together, kind of figure things out. Oh my goodness. So this is not a bike I've ever seen before. W-E-I-Z-E. I don't know what that is. But anyway, I have been doing this for, well, I've been doing this for over 30 years. This all started whenever I was in Grand Prairie, Texas, and I was young. I was looking for a job, and my mom was always talking about how she enjoyed working at Six Flags over Texas when she was growing up. I need some grease. There's some grease. So in 1993 or 92, my first job was actually working at Six Flags over Texas. Okay, I started there because my mom kept on telling me how great of an experience she had working at Six Flags, and I figured that that would be my first job. And you know what? It was a very good experience. I really did enjoy that experience. So I started working there, and I was having fun. I worked there for 2 years. The first year I was working there, I was riding my bike to Six Flags, which was about 20 miles away, and I was riding this Roadmaster Stillwater Pass. It was a very expensive bike for something that came from Toys R Us. It was $210, and it was not worth the $210, but I was riding it to work, and whenever you're putting that many miles on an inexpensive bike, you have problems. So whenever I was having problems with handlebars bending and other issues, there was a bike shop that was actually just down the road from me, and I would go into that shop and I would get parts. And I was young and I was naive. I did not understand why those bikes in that shop were so expensive. I did think they were nice, but I just didn't understand how nice they actually were. Well, I would go into the shop, I'd get the part that I'd need, and the owner of that shop, I did get to meet him, and his name was Jerry DeBow. And really cool guy. He was actually the mayor, I think, at the time that I was going there. So he juggled a lot of jobs. He owned the bike shop there in Grand Prairie, Texas, and it was actually the bike shop. And whenever I say the bike shop, I mean the name of the store was The Bike and Shop, S-H-O-P-P-E. So I would go in there and I'd get the parts, and he was a nice guy. But I would ride, and then something else would break on the bike, and I'd go back and get another part, fix the bike, myself and ride it some more, and the bike would just fall. The bike would just absolutely fall apart, which was not good for someone who was needing something needed a good, reliable transportation. Luckily, it never made me late to work. But I was working at Six Flags, and I was earning money. I was actually doing pretty good, and so I ended up breaking other things with the Roadmaster. Well, one day the owner of the shop kind of stopped me, and he was like, "Tell you what, let us fix this bike." See, what happened was this last time the derailleur went right into the wheel because the derailleur was not adjusted properly from Toys R Us, and I never messed with it. And I was going up a hill, and whenever I went to go shift into first gear, it went right into the wheel and ripped the derailleur off. This was luckily not whenever I was going to work or coming home from work. I was just riding around town. So I went to go get a new derailleur from the local bike shop, where the owner kind of stopped me, and he was like, "Tell you what, we'll install the derailleur for you, no charge. But while you're waiting, why don't you try out this bike?" Now that man, he knew what he was doing, because he would pull down a 1993 Trek 930. That bike was beautiful. It was a metallic forest green, absolutely gorgeous bike. So I was thinking, what could it hurt? So I took the bike out for a test ride, and I had never ridden something so nice as this bike that I was on. I went into the shop and I said, "I love it. How much is it?" Well, he told me, "Oh, it's only $499.99. And that was not a shock at all, because the bike felt like $1,000,000. I need to find this other nut. Lots of times there'll be parts in the bottom of the box, and there is no nut in the bottom of the box. Be right back. I have to go get a nut for this axle. So what I did was I told them that I wanted to get the bike, but I didn't have the money right then. So I showed up. I went to work, kept on riding this piece of junk Roadmaster to work. And I say piece of junk because it was. I mean, some people have good experiences with certain bikes. Other people have bad experiences. I was spending a small fortune keeping this thing going because it just could not handle the amount of miles I was putting on this thing. So went back to work, and I, 2 weeks later, I showed up at the shop with $700 in my hand. And when I saw, well, actually the owner was not there, the manager was there. His name was Glenn, and Glenn told me that they had sold that bike that I had rode, and then naturally I was disappointed, but he was like, "Hold on just a second, let me call the other store and see if they've got any of those bikes." So he called up the store in, I want to say, Arlington, and they said, "Yes, We do have one. It's a 19 and a half in the green. There's one left. A customer is test riding it right now. And Glenn kind of covered the phone up with his hand, and he said, they've got one. Do you want it or not? Somebody's test riding it right now. And I held up the money in my hand, and I was like, yes, I'm here to buy it. And he was like, don't sell it. The bike is already sold. I've got the money in my hand. Now, I'm going to tell you that I heard this story many times over the years, because that customer came back into the shop. He absolutely loved the bike, and he said that he wanted to get it, and they had to inform him that the bike had been sold. So I ended up buying this bike out of between this guy's legs, and he naturally was upset. I don't know anything other than he kind of threw a fit coming back in, because he really did want that bike, but I bought it. So I started riding that bike back and forth to work. And actually before that, whenever I got home, my mom saw this bike that I'd bought, and she was like, oh wow, that's a nice looking bike. How much was that bike? And I told her that it was $500. I'm going to tell you right now, my mom, she flipped. She said, you are going to take that bike back right now. And that's the first time I looked at my mom, and I was like, no, because, well, it was my money. I had a job, and I was paying for almost everything myself. My parents didn't have to pay much of anything, because I was buying my own shoes, I was buying my own food. Of course, I'm sure it probably didn't help that whenever I was buying my own food, my mom would make dinner, and unfortunately, I feel bad about it today. I would actually order pizza or Chinese, and I'd have it delivered to the house, and I'm sure that probably didn't make my mom feel too good, because she'd make a nice meal, and I would just eat pizza or Chinese food. But I would apologize if I could, but unfortunately, my mom's not with us anymore. So I started riding this bike back and forth to work, 40 miles a day, and I'm going to tell you, that bike, it worked great. I didn't have to worry about handlebars bending, pedals coming loose, or anything. That thing was a great bike. Well, I kept going by the bike shop anyway. I was looking at all the cool stuff that they had, and the owner of the shop would say, you need to bring the bike in to have its checkup done. And I was like, okay, but I wouldn't bring it in. I was too busy riding the bike, or I was polishing it, making small adjustments to the bike, because naturally it did need small adjustments done to it. Well, one day, whenever I showed up to the shop, the owner physically grabbed the bike from me and took the bike to the back, gave it to one of the guys that was working there to have them check over the bike to make sure that everything was going good. They were very serious about, bike maintenance. They really wanted to make sure that that bike was in good shape. Well, after a couple of minutes, he came back out and he asked me, have you been working on this bike? And I kind of looked at him and I was like, yeah. And serious face, he was like, do you want a job? And I was like, no, thank you. I'm working at Six Flags. So I continued to work at Six Flags, and that's whenever later on, about a few weeks later, I found out that I was going to have to go to summer school, and they informed me that I was going to lose my job if I went to summer school. And I was thinking, well, that bike shop offered me a job. I'm going to see if that job is still open. So I went back to the bike shop. Oh wow, this bike is very poorly put together. I went back to the bike shop and I asked them if their job offer was still available, and they seemed quite eager. They were like, yes. So apparently they were needing help there. So I started working at the bike shop, but not before giving the Six Flags their 2 weeks notice. I let them know, and there were some friends that I had there, and they seemed a little disappointed I was leaving. The management didn't seem to care that I was leaving or not, because they had plenty of other people. But I find working at Six Flags, that was a very good experience. It was my first job, and I did pretty well there. But anyway, so I started working at the bike shop March of 1994, and I found it a little interesting that the owner of the shop, interestingly enough, he immediately had me putting these $2,000 bikes together, and I was really out of my element because I didn't understand what all that they were wanting. So I paid attention to how the other guys were putting bikes together, and I'm trying to remember some of their names. I'll remember them in a bit. The store manager, his name was Glenn, and he was a grumpy guy, but I liked him. He was cool, but he was always grumpy, and he showed me what they expected as far as putting bikes together, and there was more to it than I expected, but I paid attention and I did exactly what he was telling me to do, and I caught on very quickly. Truing wheels took me longer. Now I was truing the wheels, and they seemed to be happy with my work, but I wasn't, because I was trying so hard to true these wheels, so hard to make them right, and I just knew that I could do a better job. And I'm going to tell you this right now. One of the things that the owner always told me was, whenever you start putting pedals in, you tighten them or you take them out. So I am tightening them, but I had to get my wrench here. Now, we don't throw bikes together here. We make sure that everything is safe, even if it is a Wise or hey sweetie, the name here, Weize, how do you pronounce that? Wise?
I don't know what nationality it is. I would say Wise, yes.
Alright, well, anyway, so thank you. Wow, that back wheel is actually pretty good. Are the spokes tight? A little loose. So I'm not doing a full job. This customer wanted this put together safely. So what I'm doing is I am doing kind of an inexpensive assembly, but I'm making sure that this thing is put together 100% safe. So anyway, I was working at the bike shop, And I ended up working there for 4 years. It was a great experience, and the stories I could tell you, there were some interesting guys working there. There was Brad. Brad is actually, the shop is closed, but Brad is still working with Jerry in the insurance part. See, Jerry DeBow, he was a very busy guy. He was mayor of Grand Prairie. He had his insurance company, and he had the bike shop all at once. I don't know how he did it. But Brad is still working with him even after the shop is closed down. Travis, another interesting guy. That guy was so country. Even though we were in Texas, there were some people that you just called country because they were very Texas, very very much Texas. Let me see some of the other people. Wow, there was. Oh man, I'm sorry guys if y'all see this video. If I've just forgotten y'all's name, but you have to admit that it's been 26 years since I last saw y'all. I'll try to remember some of the names later on, but let's see. So around 1999, I think it was 1998, the shop, they had expanded, and unfortunately, Jerry, I think he overreached a little bit. The economy in the bike industry, or at least that area, kind of slowed down. So Jerry ended up closing one of his stores, and that was interesting because he was trying to renegotiate the lease because it was so expensive, and he ended up coming into the store. I'll never forget it. He was coming into the store, and he let us know that they were closing that location and that we had to have everything out in like a day or two. So we were shocked. We had just finished working a full shift at the shop, and he had rented trucks, and we immediately started to move things out of the store. And he was paying us overtime, and I was looking at it as a perfect opportunity to make some extra money. So I was working, and I was working hard. We were moving everything out, and everything became a bit of a blur. I worked for 36 hours straight without stopping. People were coming to work, they'd leave, and then they'd come back in, and one of the guys was like, "Jason, have you gone home yet?" And I was like, "No." The first 24 hours, I got super tired, and then after the 24 hours, all of a sudden I got like a burst of adrenaline. I was working my tail off. I felt it was weird. It was really weird, but I was doing just fine. The owner of the shop ended up telling me he was probably worried about that overtime that I was getting from him. He just kind of pointed to the door, and he was like, "Jason, go home, get some sleep." So I was like, all right. Well, I got home, and the interesting thing is I could not sleep. I was so wired. But I eventually got some sleep, and then I came back to work. It was more than a day later, because once I did get to sleep, I couldn't wake back up again. We moved to another location there in Arlington. Well, it was time for me to move back to North Carolina because I wanted to be where I was born. And my mom decided that she was going to move with me because she said that she wanted to be where most of her kids were. So we moved to North Carolina, and I did not get a job before moving. I just figured I'd get one once I kind of move here. And luckily I was, 21. My mom was helping me out. She was going to let me stay with her until I got a job. So we moved here, and I told myself that I was going to, take a month off because I'd been working a lot, and I wanted a bit of a vacation. Well, I made it for about 2 weeks before I could not stand it anymore. I don't know if these training wheels are in the right spot, but we're going to, it looks, from my experience with these bikes, you go almost fully extended. I'm just going to go slightly shorter, but we'll see if I'm right. So moved to North Carolina. I was here for 2 weeks. I was having an absolute ball, relaxing, but after 2 weeks, I just couldn't take it anymore. I had to get a job. So I started looking around, and I started putting out resumes, and I was going to bike shops, getting interviewed, and I was getting a little discouraged because there was I wasn't getting my job very quickly, but it didn't take long. I ended up having an interview with a guy named Floyd in Garner, North Carolina, and he loved my resume. He liked my attitude. He hired me. He asked me when I could start, and I was like, I can start tomorrow. And he was like, well, give me 2 weeks, and we'll have you ready for work. See, I didn't know, but there was a girl working for him that he was not happy with. He didn't like her attitude, and he had some issues with her. So he gave her 2 weeks to find another job, which I think was good of him, and that's why I wasn't hired immediately, because he was letting her go. So I started working at Bikeline in like 1999, and that's actually where I met my wife. Was actually there was a store, a grocery store right next to the shop, and we would go in there to get change, and that's where I met my lovely wife. So started working at Bikeline, and that was a great place to work. I really enjoyed it, especially the perks, with meeting my wife just next door to the store. But good experience. I had been collecting tools working at the previous location, and I found that this shop that I started working at, they had a pretty good number of tools, but they didn't have any of the specialty tools. So I ended up bringing my own tools to that shop. I brought my repair stand, actually this one right here, to the shop. We bolted it to the floor, and also I had other tools. I had my Klein specific tools, and the nice thing about this new store is we also sold Klein bikes there, and Klein had some specialty tools that were needed from time to time, and I used my own tools that I actually brought from Texas that I had bought. That store, actually the first store I worked at, we sold Trek, we sold Diamondback, and whatever else we could get our hands on. But the whole time I was there, we sold Trek and Diamondback. The new store, we sold Gary Fisher, so no Trek, but Gary Fisher was part of Trek at the time. And we sold Diamondback there. Specialized, that was whenever I was introduced to Specialized bikes. And I did enjoy Specialized. They had some pretty cool bikes. Floyd, very interesting character. There's some things that I could tell. There are some things I could tell you about working at that store, but I'm not going to. The statute of limitations, I don't know what that would be. Actually, there was nothing like that. It was just very interesting working there. So that's where I met my wife, and I met some other cool guys. There was one of my friends named Josh. Talk about some stories there, but we don't have enough time in this video for all these people. Josh, very talented kid, extremely talented kid. That guy, he could do anything. Whenever I say, he had a genuine love of just stuff. I just can't. He was a very creative guy, very, I'm gonna say, artistic, little troubled. He really had I'm gonna say that he had a rough time growing up, but that's another time. And then, let me see, there was Sean. Sean was a great guy. He had a great family, very good family man. And then, who else? Do you remember anybody else working there, sweetie? David Savage. Ah, yes, David Savage. He lives in, I guess, Cary. I want to say that's where he lives. But he's still around. We see him every once in a while. But anyway, so those were the bikes. And I worked there for 4 years. Oh, by the way, I got the training wheels right. So I worked at Bikeline for 4 years. We were doing really good. Part of the thing with working at Bikeline was I told the boss, the owner of the shop, that I was planning on, continuing college, because I do believe in an education, and he was like, "Oh, that's great. That's excellent. You're right. That's." But so I was working there for 4 years, and he had me working so long, so hard, that I just ended up, just waking up one morning going, what am I doing? Where am I going? I'm going nowhere. So I actually just went straight to college. I signed up and signed up for college, and then I came back to the shop and I informed Floyd that I was going to be taking off from work 1 hour a week early. And I got this look. He was, I'll never forget it. He was sitting in his chair. He turned towards me And he said, first off, work is more important than school. You will work when I tell you to. And I'm looking at him, I'm like, and it was a shock. And the only thing I could say was, I can't believe I didn't have anything to say other than, okay, well, I was just checking. I wasn't checking. I was telling them that I was going to school. I had already signed up. So it was time to leave Bike Line. That was around, well, it was right before 9/11. And I found a job very quickly. I put out a couple of resumes, and a bike shop named Allstar. Don Oster, great guy. He's still on our Christmas list. He wanted me to work for him, and so he asked me when I could start. He asked me if I could start, like tomorrow, and I told him that I had to give Floyd a 2 weeks notice. So I was trying to be professional, and Don, he was like, I respect that. So he asked me if I could start working in 2 weeks, and I was like, yes. So I went into actually, I went home and I started to write a resignation letter, and my wife was kind enough to help me out with that. And I'm sorry, I said my wife. My then girlfriend was kind enough to help me write this letter, and so I was keeping it very formal. I was saying, I regret to inform you that I will no longer be providing my services with you, blah, blah, blah. And then at the bottom, I put P.S. School is more important than work. And I gave him the letter. So that's good and tight. I'll never forget it. I gave it to him. He read it. He didn't say anything. He was just sitting there, and about 2 weeks went by, and he didn't call anybody. He wasn't putting out, as far as I know, any want ads for looking for another mechanic. And my last day, I was like, all right, Floyd, it's been fun, even though I was still very upset with him. And he turned towards me and he was like, you're really leaving? And I was like, yes. And he was like, well, what would it take for you to stay? And there's no amount of money at that point that I would have taken to stay, at that place, because, what he did. And I was like, I'm sorry, I've got another job lined up, and that was it. So I left, started working at Allstar, and I worked at Allstar before 9/11 all the way to 2012. So I do remember early on I was working at Allstar, and September 11th came along, and for some reason I was at work. We were busy. We were behind, so I had shown up to work early it was probably building Christmas bikes, and I remember that on the radio there was like breaking news, and they were saying that a plane had hit the tower, and we looked at each other and we were like, wow, that's crazy. But we didn't think anything of it because, well, the towers are so huge. I just assumed that a plane had just, something went wrong with the plane and it struck the tower. But whenever we heard a second plane struck, we all knew that, that was intentional, having two planes hit the towers. So, that all, y'all know what happened there. And I continued to work at the shop. Interestingly, whenever Don first gave me a job, he was telling me that that I get commission on bikes. The first week that I was there, one of my first sales, I sold 2 Titus bikes. Both bikes ended up totaling out to over $7,000. Don came up to me and he was like, all right, I'm going to honor that agreement that we had on commission. However, we're going to have to revisit that because I can't afford this. So he did. Oh man, that paycheck, that first paycheck was amazing. I got paid more money that first paycheck than I did, working at for Floyd at Bike Line. So that was a very interesting introduction to that place. But Don, he was a huge influence on me. He would tell us, I don't care how long it takes you to put that bike together. I want it put together properly the first time, and I don't care if it takes an extra 15 minutes or an hour. I want it done properly. So I could already tell that we were going to get along just fine. Well, this bike's actually put together. I don't know how long that was, but that's how long we like to take to put things together properly. But let me finish my story about the shop. So, worked at Allstar. I worked there for, I want to say 11 years. Does that sound about right, sweetie? So I worked there for 11 years. Great owner, and me and him got along just great. He actually at one point offered to sell me the business, but at the time I couldn't do it. At the time I was paying for a mortgage. Let me see, my son had been born by then. So my wife, she was busy home with her full-time job and very difficult job of raising a kid. So it was up to me to pay for the mortgage. I had a motorcycle at the time. I was paying for the motorcycle, and we had credit card bills. So I couldn't take over for him. And actually, the timing was just off. And about that time, actually a little bit before, a bike shop had closed. It was called the Spin Cycle. It was in a great location. And in my mind, I was thinking, that's a place that I want to open up my shop if I were to open up a shop. But just the timing was all off. Well, shortly after we had actually paid off the mortgage, The credit card bills were doing fine. We were actually doing good. And my wife and I had decided that it was time to, try to think about the future. And I wasn't ready to open up a bike shop yet, but we wanted to buy, invest our money. So what we had planned on doing was buying a building for a future bike shop. We were thinking about buying this building here and renting it out, and making some money, a little bit of money that way, but actually securing a place to have a shop. Well, whenever I went to go look for places, we were looking around. I was making phone calls, I was answering phones, and during work. So anytime I had a phone call that I needed to answer, I would actually clock out and talk on the phone so that I'm not working on or answering calls or making calls during work time. So they found that a little weird, and I didn't think anything of it. I was just saying that I had stuff to do. Well, one of the workers there started getting a little suspicious, and for some reason he leapt to the conclusion that I was leaving and I was going to open up a bike shop on my own. So he told the new owner of the bike shop, because see, Don had sold the business at that point to somebody else, and he went running to Peter and saying, Jason's opening up a bike shop, and that caused all sorts of problems, because Peter at that point was thinking that I was going to be taking a lot of their customers, and he informed me that if I took customers' names out of the computer, that he would make my life difficult, because he was going to, that was bike shop property, and that there was going to be some legal things. I had no intention of doing that, because again, keep in mind, I wasn't going to be opening up a bike shop. I was buying a building. But it didn't matter. They already thought that I was going to be leaving. So Peter was like, when are you leaving? When are you leaving? And I was like, I'm not leaving. I'm buying a building. When are you leaving? When are you leaving? So with all this, my wife was like, you know what? Why don't you leave? Why don't we go ahead and open up a bike shop? And I was unprepared, but with the support of my wife, which this would not be happening right now without her, we decided to go ahead and let him know that I was going to be leaving after so much time. I forgot, was I going to give him like a year notice or a couple months notice? Do you remember? It's been a while.
At least a month because of his father.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so I know it was like a month, but I thought it was longer than that. But then we worked on a month. Okay. Okay. So we gave him a month notice eventually, and he did not make my life that good, and it's very possible that I could still be working there at this point, because keep in mind, again, that I wasn't planning on doing this. This was going to be my retirement. It was going to be for fun. It wasn't going to be for a living. But you know what? I'm thankful that they leapt to the wrong conclusion and forced me out of the shop, because I am so much happier. I was having to drive to work a full hour to work on a good day. Traffic in Raleigh is really bad, and actually the last year that I was there, I was late to work at least 3 times, where I had been driving to work and I was on the road for 4 hours to get to work. And the new owner was yelling at me, because he was saying that I should be at work on time, not showing up at work at 12 o'clock. And I was just looking at him, and I was like, I've been on the road for 4 hours to get to work, and you're yelling at me. And he was like, well, you should have left work, or you should have left for work earlier. And, it's like, wow, you can't predict it. We opened this place up in April of 2013, and it is now December 2024. So we've been here for almost 12 years. Just a few more months, it'll be 12 years. And I absolutely love it. I love working in a bike shop. There's just something soothing about working on a bike, straightening wheels, being inside of a air-conditioned and heated place, and it being yours. That's the real joy, is kind of starting your own business. Although it was tough, it was real tough for the first 6 years. It was really tough, and I'm not saying it's easy right now, because trust me, it's not. My wife just paid the property taxes. It's really tough, but basically this whole long thing was, how did I get into the bike industry? It was purely by accident. I have no idea. It just worked out that way, and I stayed in the business for part of the love of working on bikes. There's just something really soothing. It's almost like meditation, working on the bikes. Maybe a little bit of laziness. I can't put that aside. I really thought I was going to be going into the military or working as a car mechanic, but my brother was constantly complaining about burning himself, getting all hot and sweaty, working in a hot garage, so that certainly didn't help. But I do love it. Zeke back here loves it. Look, he's working on some cheap little bike, and he's got a little bit of a smirk. There's the smile. So there's just something about working in a shop. There has to be, because there certainly isn't any money in it. Because I'll tell you what, I am not a rich person by far, and neither is Zeke over here. So, but it's just for the love. It's just for the love. So, if you're looking to open up your own business, if you're looking to open up your own bike shop, don't do it for the money. If you've got the money, if you've got plenty of money, and you're just looking for a job that you can actually enjoy, yeah, it's a great, fun job. I shouldn't say it's a great job, it's a fun job. But I hope y'all enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy this video, please leave me a big thumbs up. Don't forget to tell your friends. Check out some of the other videos on the corner of the screen. Don't forget to subscribe, and we will talk to you later. Thanks.